Hello, Luke. Thank you for coming by. Everyone, this is Luke. He is a manufacturing engineer of Abbott, and he's pretty much the smartest, or at least one of the smartest BME colleagues I know. So thank you for coming in, Luke.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely. So the reason why I made this channel is like to talk to people, like to see, know more about their career pathways. So like, let's just say for now, just manufacturing engineer, and I'm hoping that you could explain your role as a manufacturing engineer at Abbott and how you got to that. So
Yeah, so you and I were in the same graduating class of biomedical engineering at the University of Minnesota in 2018. And looking for jobs out of college, I didn't have any internship experience, which a lot of people did, and that gives you an extra advantage in finding a spot. And so I was applying to all the big medical device manufacturing companies in the state of Minnesota that I knew about. You know, Medtronic, Abbott, Boston Scientific, 3M are the biggest, and then there's some other smaller ones. I applied straight on their careers websites for entry-level manufacturing, not manufacturing, entry-level engineering spots of all kinds of engineering. And I sent in over 200 applications. I dealt with the frustration of having to retype out your resume in separated form fields, which I'm sure you know about.
yeah,
After several months, even going into 2 months post-graduation, I got nothing. Nobody contacted me back. Maybe 30% of applications I received a decline from, but the others just were throwing in the toilet.
ghosting you, yeah.
Ghosting me, yeah.
Same here.
I was really kind of discouraged. Like, I feel all alone. How am I going to find a job? I don't know anybody who works at these companies. I don't know even what the different jobs look like in these different, you got R&D, process development, quality, engineering, manufacturing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant because
Same here too.
in school, you're learning about physics and fluid flow through a pipe and
thermodynamics and
they don't tell you what an industry is like. So, after months of having nothing, I found out there's a secret to getting hired as an entry-level engineer that I didn't know about. And no one told me. I wish someone had. It's contract to hire. So turns out most big companies who want to hire somebody out of college with no experience will have a host of opportunities, but they never hire salary because it's a risk. Somebody with no work experience, you don't want to go through all of the financial waste of onboarding someone, giving them their benefits, giving them months of salary. Turns out they might not be the best fit, or not necessarily because they're a bad worker, just because they might be better somewhere else. But then you're stuck with them because if you decide to let them go, you have to pay severance, and that's additional cost. So contract structures deal with that. Almost everyone I know, probably a dozen or more people from our graduating class who worked at Medtronic or Abbott, which used to be St. Jude Medical, or Boston Scientific or 3M, they all got hired as contract, even people with internships. And so there's several different contracting agencies that you can find on 3M. I'm not necessarily going to mention them by name because competition or whatever. But they're on LinkedIn. If you can ask me about it, I'll tell you who my recruiter and my agency was.
No, you don't have to if it's private, but same here too. Actually, I've been hired as a contractor, and not even for a biomedical engineering role.
Yeah.
So I totally feel you. I mean, I wish there was like a class in college where they tell you like at least like half a semester, like here's the options you can choose about these different career pathways as a BME, and it's all research oriented, and it's almost like maybe advertising about the work they do in their classes, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't really help you get the entry level, job that you want,
Yeah.
right?
And I mean, it's not a lot of information. It's just one little tip about, hey, companies like to hire entry level as contractors before salary.
Tony Robbins.
Now, if you're lucky, you have a lot of internship experience, or you did a co-op, or you have good network, you might run in right away. But that's not as common. Several people in our graduating class got hired as contract at the same building and site in Medtronic where I started, and I saw them at lunch. And one of them I worked with. Do you remember Christine Louis? She sat next to me for 8 months, and we had a great time together.
Oh wow!
They hired 6 of us for a project. If contractors can be brought on, for like a 6 to 12 month project. If you're doing some sort of remediation effort that you're not going to need a permanent engineer for, but it's a win-win for everybody because they get the extra help they need for this push to a deadline, and the workers get the experience they need to get a better job later without the pressure of loyalty after the contract is over.
Well, I have some questions. Yeah, actually, I know you can't probably disclose the contract company that you went to, but can you disclose like how can I find these contract companies? Because I think you could find them in career fairs, but I wonder if there's alternative ways to do that.
Yeah, I found out about mine because a friend of a friend saw a LinkedIn post that they thought would be good for me, and as soon as I saw that post, they're looking for contract engineer. It was looking for somebody like me. I gave him my resume, and I got an interview the next week. So.
Oh, wow. I just have lots of friends, and there you go, right?
I think I've heard people complain about LinkedIn, about how it can be kind of fake and stuff. And, I'm not, I don't spend time scrolling the feed to see what like career things other people are doing, but it was how I found my first job. So I'm not gonna dig it.
That's strange. I'm sorry, but that's strange.
I don't have a well-established network. I don't go around, request, please be my connection. But because of that kind of connection, I found out about the opportunity.
True. Interesting though, because I always thought LinkedIn was the most legitimate way to find a job. Actually, I didn't know that people thought it was kind of like a little sketchy or something. So.
Oh, I guess that wasn't the right word.
It's fine. I mean,
I've heard people complain about it in the way that people complain about a lot of things, like
Facebook,
in a comedic kind of sense.
I see. Oh, sorry. I have a bad sense of humor, so I can't discern good humor. Sorry about that. But I'm curious. I know that full time is a lot more interview rounds, but in your contracting position, what were is it? I know it's a little bit more easier. What sort of opening skills you need to be a manufacturing engineer, or do they just look at your skills and say you look more like you're more fit for an R&D engineer, you look more fit for a manufacturing engineer? I'm just wondering, how does that process work?
Yeah, so when I got hired, my very first job as a contractor was actually a supplier quality engineer, and they were hiring for a very specific project that actually probably didn't require any engineering skills at all. It was mostly documentation and calling people on the phone, because it was supplier quality or talking with suppliers. We had to get all our suppliers to basically sign new contracts. That was the job. Call every one of these 100 suppliers over the next 9 months, get the suitable representative on the phone, send them over this document, and get them to sign it with their changes. That was the job. So it was not actually an engineering specific thing, but it was an engineering position because in the structure of the company, the contracts we were dealing with were regarding product specifications that engineers are in charge of owning. If you have a supplier that offers you product and the product has to be 3 inches in diameter, it's an engineer who's in charge of controlling whether it's 3 inches or not.
Oh, I see.
And so in that case, it was somewhat disappointing at first. Like, man, I feel like I'm at the bottom of the barrel here in terms of where I'd like to be in my career. I don't want to be signing paperwork as a career, but it was also a really, really good opportunity because while I was there, in addition to that project, they were able to leverage us for other work that was more relevant and had a lot more variety.
Okay.
And so it was in that work where, they hired us for this supplier project, but they also had a lot of other problems to fix. And,
Nice.
we had extra, that beginner's level of extra enthusiasm, like, oh, let me do anything, boss.
Rookie energy.
Yeah, rookie energy, that's the word. And doing sorts of odd jobs, and then they wound up throwing me on post-market quality problems. So when there's a manufacturing risk, or there's a manufacturing nonconformance, and there's risk that product in the field is impacted. I know those are technical terms, but something goes wrong in the factory, you don't find out until after the product is built, and the customer might have it. If it's a medical device, that could impact patient safety. It could impact customer satisfaction, and so there's a process set up for dealing with that. The worst case scenario is you issue something like a product recall or a field action, which you may have seen in the news has happened from time to time.
Yeah.
And so dealing with those kind of issues is actually what gave me the skills to be successful in interviewing for my next position.
Yeah, I could tell.
Because it was helping support manufacturing in that auxiliary role. So if I had to give somebody advice about following this career path that I followed, or, if it's your first job and you don't have any experience, don't be a snob, take the job. Oh, gee, that rhymes. Don't be a snob, take the job. And then when you're there, try and take advantage of opportunities to find those auxiliary activities, like go investigate. You've got the badge. You can get in the door. You can go to people's desks and see what their jobs are like.
Yeah, I agree. I did the same thing too in my job too. I know that's excellent advice. I like going, don't be a snob, take the job. that's the perfect. I should make that the title of this YouTube video. And second, oh my God, it's true. Yeah, I mean, same thing in my job. Like with your job, if you don't like the role you have, or I mean, your role already, I think it's pretty good. You have that nice, commanding role where you have to have excellent communication acuity with dealing with people. But even then, you expand your role and you grow into the role that you want to be. And then there you go. That's evidence for your manager to say, hey, he can take this responsibility. And you have that nice portfolio where you can move on to your next position, which is currently the Abbott manufacturing engineering position too, right? Or it was a lead up to that point.
Yeah. Yep. So I have talked a lot about the contract at Medtronic, and making friends with the people you work with, like if you watch The Office with Michael Scott and you see all the relationships people develop, that's valuable because that also taught me, like how to comport yourself in a workplace. If you're coming out of college, you haven't worked like in an office setting, certain things are a certain way, how people get their coffee, and if you have to show up late or leave early, what does that look like? Do you just do it quietly? Do you tell everybody, oh, sorry, I'm late, walk into the building? It's like you think the principal is going to send you to his office or something. No, that was a new experience. So yeah.
Nice. That's pretty cool. And I'm curious, let's say a high schooler, I know it's kind of crazy. You might be young, but could a high schooler try applying for contract to hire jobs? And let's just say if he can't, maybe is there a possibility he can with a certain set of skills? I'm just curious, because that's one of my future questions.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of contract jobs available for a high schooler, but they're not going to be engineering jobs. You can be a technician,
Oh,
or you can be like a documentation level. And I think, I don't know what that job field looks like, if there's
oh,
a high
sorry.
demand
I
for
meant like
that.
if you graduate from high school and say like, college. I heard from Luke and Joshua that that they didn't use much of their college coursework, even though it's valuable if you want to be a research and go
Uh,
academically. But let's just say that I want to have 2 years of CAD experience, and let's just say I design these cool parts and become a salesperson. Would that sort of skill set be sufficient to um, I know, yeah, to be
yeah.
applying for the contract to hire position. I'm just wondering because I'm trying to like one of my ideas, like one of the goals of this YouTube channel is to like find a way. If you have less than $1,000, is there a way you can get these full time jobs by skipping college, especially during these times? So I was just wondering.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of roles that I look for, and of course I was biased because I already had college
Yeah.
as my thing. I was looking for jobs that had college as a requirement. Most of the kind of jobs that I'm familiar with were like required you to have some kind of degree. I hardly saw any jobs that required just a 2-year degree. Now, if you're thinking of going into the engineering world, working with designs or working with products, you can definitely try and you can get a cheaper degree by doing your first couple of years at community college, and then you and then if you're struggling with math or something, and you don't want to do the as technically difficult coursework, you can get a intellectually lighter load by getting a manufacturing. Sorry, not manufacturing. You can
Yeah.
get like a mechanical design engineer degree, where it's not an engineering degree, it's a design degree. My older brother got that, and he actually um, got a great job from it, from his network, where in, you start out doing like CAD and 3D design work. There's a huge market for that. In fact, there's an entire department at my company just of people who manage the 3D design files.
Hmm.
So that might be a way to sort of shortcut around and to get in the same kind of industry. And then once you have the job experience and you've been there for a certain amount of time, if you can expand and develop your career once you're there, like you've got a foot on the ground already.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's
If you had $1,000 and you were trying not to go to school and do something else and get in this industry, in the manufacturing world, we hire dozens and dozens of people all the time for direct assembly jobs for $16 to $18 an hour, and you don't need any skills at all, but you can demonstrate proficiency, demonstrate so I mean, if what you're doing in that kind of role is you're a line worker, you're sitting at a bench with a supervisor, with other people, sometimes in a clean room, sometimes in just a normal space, assembling medical devices. It requires a high level of training within the company, and so once you get good at it, you're an assembly line worker. But if you demonstrate proficiency, you demonstrate intuition, knowledge of the process, you can work your way up from the bottom if you're better than everyone else by suggesting improvements, rubbing up with the engineers and support staff and saying, hey, I noticed this machine works a lot better when we use more lubricant, but our process doesn't call for that. You think you could change the process and add more lubricant? That happened in our case. Those are the kind of people who you can start off by making $16 to $18 an hour doing that role. Then you can get promoted to a production trainer or production technician, whereas a technician, you're not responsible for direct assembly, but for maintaining the workspace. You could get, and then the promotion tree you would go into supervising or being a subject matter expert, and you could do that without going to college and without having to pay for college. And then the really good thing is you're in that spot. You get promoted up to manufacturing engineering technician. You've got a job, either a salaried or contract. Then your company will pay tuition reimbursement for you to go to school.
Oh, wow.
So
holy cow.
My company will pay me, I believe it's up to $10,000 a year.
Wow.
For any higher level education that they deem will improve my person as human capital for the company's benefit.
That is awesome, man. Holy cow. And okay, so it sounds like one of the skills, two skills is one, communication, of course. Two, you have to have that eye for design to see how you can cut
Yes.
costs, save money, or better ways to improve the design of equipment.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have
wow.
to be better than the majority of people you're working with, because the number of people in the lower part of the pyramid is you got this many people and you got this many people.
Yeah, but it's like young blood versus old blood. So basically you have that sort of enthusiasm and I think creative edge, against old people. And you have more motivation than them who just want to go back to their family. Well, I don't know. I don't want to.
Because I'll give you an example.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Okay.
I'll change the person's name. There's a girl named Julie who worked at that $16, $18 an hour assembler for a couple years with highly technical skills, putting together steering wires into ablation catheters that are used in surgeries to treat atrial fibrillation. So just technical things, lots of stuff. She offered those good ideas. She got promoted to production trainer. She got promoted to group lead. So she's in charge of other people. Then she started fixing equipment on her own because the maintenance and support staff couldn't do it as fast as she could. And then she got promoted to manufacturing engineering technician. Now she has a cubicle. She's got her own office. She's doing some of the same work that engineers are doing, which means that over time, as she builds that experience, she'll get pay raises as in that technician role. And then she's going to school at night for an actual engineering degree.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So she it's taking her a long time, and if you do that instead of going to school, it's going to take you longer to build up your salary, right? You're going to be working at a lower level of income until you can climb those ladder steps. And if you demonstrate proficiency, you can definitely climb those steps if you're ahead of the curve. But financially speaking, if you can find a way to get student loans or to get financed or to cash flow a 4-year degree, that is undoubtedly a better investment in yourself in terms of financial turnaround. I would not recommend someone to go from the bottom up and get a degree later if they had any opportunity to get a 4-year degree to start.
Oh, shoot.
But if that's what you're stuck with, absolutely the opportunity is there. And I would recommend, apply to a medical device assembly position.
Oh my, I'm curious.
And they're hiring for that all the time at many different companies. Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and Abbott are hiring for manufacturing technicians in the suburbs of the Twin Cities all year long.
Oh my
Even
God.
during coronavirus, because people were quitting because they didn't want to work alongside other people. Now, we did have probably the best in the industry coronavirus mitigation plans, but people were still uncomfortable, and that's okay. So we had headcount. We had people leave because they couldn't take care of their kids while the kids were home from school, and so a lot of really unfortunate reasons. But even during non-COVID times, there's a lot of turnover because you're hitting that same wage bracket as almost just a little bit higher than fast food or retail. So there's to summarize, I don't know if you're going to edit my thing to be shorter.
Oh no, no, I'm going to include the whole of it because that was pretty cool. Even the Julie story.
Yeah, and Julie's helping me on projects now, and she's a whiz. I'll ask her to help me collect some data for something that, because I'm almost overwhelmed with projects, it's hard for me to find time to do things. I ask her, hey, can you collect like these 1,200 data points that I don't have time for because I'm too busy? She's like, sure. 3 hours later, here you go. So she demonstrates a high level of proficiency in like that go-getter attitude that
winner's attitude. Oh my god, that's so cool. I'm curious, like, how long did it take her to get to that position, like from the start to the finish? Is it like,
so a lot longer than you would have if you had gotten a degree. Okay. She's in her late 20s, and she started. I don't know when she started. I don't know her whole life story, but she's in her late 20s, and she also got married and has kids. It would have probably been more difficult for her at that wage level if, with different life situations, different people are different. But.
Yeah, I know it might take her a little longer, but I'm sure that she paid off her loans quickly, and also when she's done with college, she doesn't have to worry about a job waiting for her. She already has a bunch of experience, and then like what you said, companies are in demand for, I guess, that sort of background experience of memorizing all these details, and I think it definitely improved her in way in helping you a lot, like what you mentioned as well, like complete mastery of most of the medical devices you worked with.
Right.
I'm sorry. Funny thing, I realized we were talking about how are you getting to being a manufacturing engineer, but we didn't actually get to the manufacturing engineering part, like because you were talking about your experience in Medtronic.
What do I do as a manufacturing engineer?
Yeah.
So you sent me this job description.
No, sorry. I couldn't find an Abbott one, so I was trying to I was trying to. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I could probably find you one if you had asked for it, but I went through it, and it's actually basically spot on. I've looked at manufacturing engineering job descriptions at other companies for places I've applied to or looked at or browsed, and most descriptions look almost exactly the same. The kind of skills they're looking for, because the production environments don't change that much company to company.
Oh, I see. Interesting. I know the audience can't see the description, but you don't mind if you just tell me like top 2 or 3 things you're most involved with as a manufacturing engineer for Abbott.
Yeah. So I'm looking sideways at my double monitor here to read the descriptions.
Signs of a true engineer, double monitors.
Yeah. My work paid for me to have like a monitor set up at home. It was great.
Paying free for everything, man.
Even though because I support the production environment, which is on site, I'm usually on site at work every day during Corona. They still basically allocated Corona capital for people to work from home. So I got some sweet monitors.
That is so
cool. To answer your question.
Yeah, sure.
There's like maybe 10 or 12 bullets here in the duties and responsibilities.
I know there's so much. And
I think the first bullet's the most universal for a manufacturing engineer. Supporting production in reducing, eliminating downtime, scrap, and using good analytical methodologies. You read these descriptions and you see a lot of big words, and you see it almost might not make sense to you, or it looks like foreign language, or I don't know what using analyzing methodologies means, but being in this role for a while, it makes more sense that they're talking about very specific skills. So when it says good analytical methodologies, what it means is you're able to look at a manufacturing issue. Let's say you have a weld process that uses a welder, and 5% of your welds are bad. That means 5% of product you're building has to go in the trash. That's scrap. And so you can use analytical methodologies. You can statistically model over time. Was it always at 5%? Did it start at 1%, 2, 3, 4, and it's growing? Has it always been steady? Was there a change point in history that we can look in the equipment records and see, after this maintenance event, then we started seeing 5% scrap? That level of analysis is absolutely necessary to figure this kind of stuff out.
Oh, I see. Oh, before you go on to the next one, just to break that one down, I assume that that requires, of course, statistics knowledge. Um, and also like, do you need
Well,
some a little? Oh, little, really? I was about to say how much statistics
it's more
experience.
critical thinking. If you need to understand the actual statistics behind the analysis,
Okay.
the company will gladly teach you statistics. If you never had a statistics course in your life, they'll teach you the skills.
Wow.
Or
Holy
they'll
cow.
prefer somebody who has the education background. But there's another manufacturing engineering technician on our group who's same level as Julie I mentioned before. Doesn't have a 4-year college degree, is on a salaried position, didn't take statistics, is doing this kind of statistical analysis, and we just provided their like learning courses as part of the company, and then the boss just sitting down with him one-on-one and like talking him through statistics. You don't have to have the full college course of knowledge. You just need to know how to do this one analysis.
Oh, that's blowing my mind. Holy cow. Dude, this is making more. If I were to restart my life, I think I would go with Julie's path because holy cow, this sounds like almost like a nice, smooth incline in a way, just going up there. So, oh my God.
You are sacrificing income in the long term based on a slower increase in income. But
Does that include
in this,
student college loan debt? If it's like a lot of money, I think it kind of like you kind of have a
but
little bit.
if you take out college loan debt, that might balance it out. If you can find a way to cash flow or do 4-year college for cheap or take scholarships or something,
Oh, yeah.
obviously that's going to be better. But yeah, taking into account how much debt people can take out to go to a 4-year college, and especially how expensive it is and unrealistically expensive it is, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It turns out that this was a really good path for both Julie and um, another made up named Kevin for this other guy. He was hired because he was in the Marines for several years and had technician experience. So, in that case, he had climbed a different ladder to get to where he was.
Interesting. Well, I'm curious. Do you need like speaking of like I'm sorry, back to the more the other question. Okay, so interesting. Statistics you don't need much to teach you, but do you need CAD experience to go into the design documentation or CAD
In
solid?
my specific role, in my company structure, we have different people who are in charge of the CAD models.
Okay.
But in a similar role to mine somewhere else, yeah, it would be valuable to have CAD experience. I have CAD on my computer. I use it sometimes to model something when it's faster and I know what I'm dealing with instead of having to wait, put in a request through the ticket system to get some designer to do it for you. It's a little faster, but it's not required in my case.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Sounds good. And I assume that you don't need like a lot of experience with CAD, just enough to make shapes. Or I don't know if you had to learn about like tensions or more higher in this part,
Or
or
like, what's it called? Finite element analysis.
yeah, finite element analysis.
You're
Yeah,
probably not going to need to use finite element analysis unless you're actually designing.
yeah,
Unless
guys.
you're actually in a job role that's designing stuff.
Okay, cool. All right, that's I feel more relaxed now. And how about the process? Okay, so the second bullet point says process flow, PFMEA. Just reading these words, I get a little anxious. Like I don't know.
Yeah. I think they spit out all these buzzwords on purpose because it's almost like a filter. You're going to have the people who understand what that means and they'll interview well because they know what you're talking about. And then you're going to have people who are trying to fake it who does, oh, I don't know what a PFMEA is. Well, you could Google it and you could do a little bit of research and you could find out what a PFMEA is. And you could learn how it's used in a manufacturing environment. And talk to it in your interview. If you do that, I would recommend just not to lie and say you've dealt with it before if you haven't. But I mean, some of these things are Googleable. So process flow is basically just, and on an assembly line, you have weld this part in a box, and then you have an arrow to another box to the next step. And that's, attach tubing in a box, and then you have an arrow to a next step, and it's mold, hub, and, The process flow is just like the order of operations. So
okay. So you need Google Slides experience.
creating and maintaining it is, for example, you could change the order of operations.
Okay.
Let's say I have the specific product I make is an introducer catheter. So it's basically a long plastic tube with a hub and a seal at the end and some tubing. It's a medical device. I won't go into it. But, you have to coat the length of the tubing with a chemical coating to make it lubricious,
Okay.
lubricant. And then you have to attach a tubing at the end. Well, those two operations don't depend on each other. They could be done in either order. So which one happens first? We found out that they actually were affecting each other, but we didn't know about it. And when we figured that out, we switched the order. So that's what process flow means.
Oh, wow. So we need great deduction skill on that one.
Yeah, it's all part of the analytical methodologies, the critical thinking, seeing where problems are, and figuring out what causes them. Root cause analysis, I don't know if that word is on here. RCA, you might see root cause analysis is part of Six Sigma methodology or lean manufacturing methodology. You might see that's further down on your list here of this description.
Yeah, Six Sigma. Yeah, I see it. Oh, wow. I think that's important to know, definitely.
So.
Wow. Oh, no, that's fine. It's fine. Oh, I should share my screen. Holy cow. Hold for a second.
Are you sure? Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh.
Are you pointing at stuff?
As an engineer, I forgot our technological capabilities. Let me know if you can see my screen.
How many times a week does somebody forget to share their screen? Yeah, this is the same thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And so we went over the first one right here. This is the manufacturing engineering description, and you already went over the first two. And the third one, you kind of went over a bit before, this is like what you mentioned, like entry level stuff that you kind of have to master, but it also is like.
So this talks about product cost standards. So that's saying product cost standards and ergonomics. So that's saying, we say it costs a certain amount of money to build a part, but the way you calculate that is basically averaging up over a year or a certain amount of time. We spent this many dollars on labor, and this is how many parts we made. You do that division, the numerator denominator, you figure out how much labor per part. Right? If you can make parts faster, then the labor per part is less, and you spend less money on it. So that's what it means by product cost standards.
Oh, but how often do you have to do that? Because I assume that medical devices, it's kind of like quarterly, right? I mean, I don't know much about it, but you go ahead.
There's a finance group that does that math for me.
Oh, okay.
but when it's talking about meet or exceed labor content and product cost standards, you're trying to just implement improvements as you can, just as a continuous improvement exercise to look for opportunities to reduce the amount of time it takes to do an operation. So for example, we have an operation where you have to drill a hole. Drill tiny little holes at the end of the plastic tubing. Those holes allow for vacuum relief. Those holes have to be drilled with a laser. For a long time, we had to send those parts in the mail to another contracting company, and they use their laser technology to drill the holes. Well, somebody had the idea, well, we can make our own laser machine and do it ourselves, and we can spend $500,000 to build and create our own laser machine. And if we use that, we'll save all this money because we don't have to ship in the mail. We don't have to pay for the profit margins of the contracting company. And the return on investment is if we spend $500,000 on that machine now, we'll save $4 million over 5 years. It'll pay for itself. So that's another angle to look at what product cost standards means. And of course, ergonomics is also important. When you have an operator who's manually, you have a part, you need to place another part on top of it for it to weld. So you take the part, place it in the welder, take it out. Part, welder. Imagine doing this 8,000 times a day.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if he has a great interest in Legos, I think he would have a time of his life doing that. Just making it fix.
So then you get into like OSHA, and health and safety factors of the repetitive motion. You want to minimize. You want to keep
Oh
where,
wow.
where the operator has to put their hands, like keeping in a neutral zone, making sure that they don't have to crane their neck or anything like that, because something that looks really easy, if you have to do it 100 times and you have to reach all the way over here and reach like 3 feet in front of you, even if it's fine to do a couple times, just the repetitive motion can cause strain injuries over time when you're doing that 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week.
I haven't considered that. Oh my gosh.
So that's what it's talking about ergonomics is designing your workstation. If you have, your equipment, your workstation, your flow of product to fit in within the like geometry of the human body so that, you can do it fast and safely.
Let's see. Do you have to be like? Do you need some sort of anatomy experience, or like? To me, it's kind of weird, but I feel like you could almost be like a fitness trainer in a way to have that sort of experience as well, right?
So we have in our business, we have
Go ahead.
actual occupational therapists and like trainers, health trainers who specialize in performing those assessments.
Okay.
So if we find out that there's a couple operators who've been doing this, they were recently switched to this operation where it's standing on your feet the whole time because it's a standing operation, and they have a strain in their shoulder. They report a strain in their shoulder. They go to the occupational nurse. Then the nurse comes out and they observe the station. They observe how that employee is doing it. If it turns out that they're doing it with inefficient motions, they can train them on how to do it better to minimize the strain. But often, I shouldn't say often, on occasion, we'll find that there's an opportunity to improve the workspace layout of the station to help the human body. And then that responsibility would be transferred to the manufacturing engineer to implement that change.
Oh, fascinating. Holy cow. Wow. Okay. I did not know that. I'm so glad I kind of guessed that right, to be honest. But
Am I going into too much detail? We're down
no, no,
on
no,
the third
oh,
bullet
no,
out of 12.
no. I mean, the first three is fine. I could add this link to the description below, but I think does that capture like 90% of what you do as a manufacturing engineer? I have a feeling that since it's the top three, it must be.
I'd say yes, and to in terms of what's common, if you have a Venn diagram of all the different manufacturing engineers that I work with, and you overlapped, what do all of them do is this stuff, those top three.
Oh, there are different manufacturing engineering roles. You don't mind if you give a quick
Yeah.
gist? Oh yeah, sure. You don't mind if you give a quick gist of what sort of manufacturing engineering roles are out there? I thought, yeah, go ahead.
They'll all be called manufacturing engineering, and you'll basically be doing the same type of thing. But depending on your application, what you've been hired for, or what the needs of the business are, you might they might allocate half of your time towards a longer term project that isn't direct line support. For example, implementing new production equipment that hasn't been used before. So half of my time, I'm 50% allocated to supporting the production line and 50% allocated to developing a longer term automated equipment to replace a manual process.
I see.
And
Wow.
so that involves, designing brand new equipment, qualifying the equipment. So essentially performing tests and writing reports to show that the equipment is capable of doing its job. And then, managing the finances to purchase and build the equipment, etc. So longer term projects and other things, your job's gonna.
So marketing skills, I assume, or no
Definitely.
accounting skills. I don't know if that's right.
Like budget management and project management skills. Yeah.
Okay.
So I use Microsoft Project to track the timeline of the milestones for my project. It's, I have 9 months to build this equipment and basically get it working on the production line. It's going to take, you have to allocate this, so much time goes to designing it, purchasing it, building it, etc.
Wow. Okay, cool. And I know that I'm conscious of your time as well, but before we end it, I'm just curious to know. Okay, so last week question: do you think your hobbies But what sort of skill sets? I know you said you use a contract to hire to get to that position, but do you feel like you had some skills that kind of couple it that compound how well you did your job? Like, I guess to improve your deduction. I think you were excellent, or you always had the nice routine of doing crossword puzzles. I don't know if that. I don't know if I remember that correctly, but I think that's yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, doing anything, any kind of hobbies that are related with critical thinking. I I'm a strong believer that any sort of musical experience, learn a music. It's Corona. You're in quarantine. Take some time and learn a musical instrument if you don't know one. Like go online and buy a clarinet or buy a recorder or a flute or like an electric piano or something, because that wires up all the correct things in your brain to do critical thinking. Creativity and critical thinking are like left brain, right brain. They go hand in hand. It's always good to have a little bit of both. Anything to engage yourself like that. I'd say I don't think there's anything I wouldn't recommend.
Oh, okay. I'm curious. Like, has your job like also kind of improved or compound the current hobbies or skills you're doing right now, or is it just like completely separate from your own life, like a Batman and Bruce Wayne thing? You know?
Yeah, I think slightly. I've taken what I've learned at my job to apply to my life somewhat in terms of optimizing processes, but a lot of what's caused me to be successful in my job is things that I've learned there. So I'd say if you have the ability to learn new things quickly, then you'll be successful. Hobbies, try something new you haven't done before, figure it out from scratch. Because as a manufacturing engineer, you need to understand how your equipment builds the weld. If I have a welder that creates a bond between materials, I need to understand science, or at least somewhat a little bit about what makes the materials stick together, what factors go into the weld, the speed, the frequency, the force, the energy, how all those factors affect it. You got to learn all that from scratch. So if you can find a hobby where you can learn something from scratch that you didn't know anything about, I'd recommend.
I see. Oh, okay. And additional skills that you kind of mentioned, material science and a little bit of physics as well, right? So
Yeah, that kind of background knowledge doesn't hurt. The kind of knowledge you get from courses in school, it does come back and assist you.
oh, that's
So
comforting to hear. I feel a little bit better about my BME experience. Yeah.
yeah, understanding like how plastics fit together if you deal with plastics, or the sort of physics terms like energy and force, etc.
Torsion, yeah.
That kind of just general background knowledge will help inform some things.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Well, I think I went through most of my questions, but Luke, thank you so much. Thank you for being on this guest and telling more about manufacturing engineering job. And hope you don't mind if I share that secret that you gave to the whole public. So
Yeah, I wish more people knew about it so they could be successful too.
true. Thank you. Well, all right, guys. Hope you enjoy this video. Luke, I don't know. Are you a person who's open to like social media feedback? Like, hey, Luke, I have a question, or are you just like, I know people like to be recluse. I'm recluse too. So
Yeah. I guess you have my LinkedIn info. I'll have to update my profile to make sure it's all
wait,
up to date and stuff.
I don't want anyone to spam you and all that stuff.
I don't actually have any social media accounts other than I think LinkedIn, and I do have a Twitter, but I don't tweet. I just use it to lurk. So,
Kind of do the same thing as well. Okay, well, thank you, Luke. I'm gonna go and end this recording. I hope you guys enjoyed this I'm pretty sure there's a lot of nice gold stuff that Luke has given, so hope you find it really helpful.